Hello and welcome to the Four Words Podcast. My name is Aaron Doom Spikenere Harris, and I'm joined by three pretty okay dudes and one awesome special guest.
Thank you very much.
Say what's up, Asterisk and Frostbite Haber.
Yep. What's up?
Hey.
And this week we have special guest, former LCS pro for Velocity Esports and Complexity Red, right?
Yep, that is correct.
NK Inc. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Good to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too, man. Thanks for coming on. Following in the series that we've been doing on the Art of League, our first episode was with Pseudonaut on The Art of Support. It's a book that he wrote. And just talking about the art of support, talking about playing a sport in League of Legends. The next episode that we did in this series was The Art of Mid with GG himself, Big Fat LP. And that was an excellent episode as well. That book has been written as well. Now, the other rules, Pseudonaut has not written a book for yet, but he did help us get an awesome guest that's going to definitely help us with explaining the jungle role to you guys. First off, we're just going to dive into news really, really quick. First off, Patreon. Still going on patreon.com/TForce Network. Our new episode on Corki with Latman is launching very soon for the $10 and up subscribers. So check that out because it's really good episode. Also, we have a new sponsor, radsoap.com. Use the offer code
RadSoap.
Yep, use the offer code TForce. You get 20% off, and they have great soaps, great lotions, stuff like that. I ordered some stuff for my wife. She loves it. So, but let's just dive right in here. So, NK, first tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into League? How long you've been playing, and what made you jungle?
So I used to be a big FPS player, and I played a lot of Halo and stuff like that on consoles, and that was my go-to game. I think I played that game for 3 or 4 years, and I went to all the MLG events for it, and I was just really big into that game. And one day, one of my buddies with Halo was like, "Hey, you should come play this computer game. It's called League of Legends. It's a lot of fun." And I remember I used to play Dota, and I was like, I'll probably be pretty good at that game. It looks pretty similar to Dota. So I remember I'd go play League with him, and it was he would always play Heal Ignite Twitch before either of those got nerfed. And it would just level 1 kill the dude, and that was his go-to strategy. You could tell he was an FPS player how he played, And that's pretty much what got me started into League of Legends. And pretty much I just kept playing, and what ended up happening was back in those days in season 1 and season 2, jungling was really hard and nobody wanted to do it. So what ended up happening was I was like, well, it'd be really easy to get on a good team if you're a jungler and you're not bad because nobody wants to do it. So I was like, all right, I'll just be a jungler. So that's pretty much how I decided to be a jungler.
That was back.
Take the easy way out.
That was back when they were releasing champions every 2 weeks, and they would throw out a champion and be like, "It's a jungler, player in the jungle, Diana, Nocturne, jungle, please, jungle,
somewhere else."
And the funny thing is that that's kind of why I jungle is simply because what got me into jungling was trying to queue up, and I just could never get the role I wanted. But I found that if you jungled, you always get your role. So I'm like, all right, let's dive into the jungle. And now I just love it. And I love the champ pool within the jungle. So, I mean, you played Ezreal jungle, though. So I guess champ pool doesn't really matter. But so let's hop into first off, what is the most important thing that you think a jungler can do early game?
So one of the problems I have with a lot of these questions was it's kind of asked from the standpoint where it's what's one thing I can do to improve my play? And it's hard to answer those questions.
It's true.
Because there's a lot of things
they are very general
to improve your play. So basically, the best advice I can give you on what's the most important thing you can do early game is you have to look at your team comp and look at what your champions do, and then play to that. Because it's if you have a bot lane who's gonna get crushed. If you have Vayne and then Janna against a Caitlyn and Nami, they're gonna get crushed. So if you want to have any hope of surviving past 10 minutes, you're gonna have to help them. And it's just like you have to look at what's happening on the map and decide what lane you're going to go to based on the things you know about the lane matchups.
Okay.
So basically relieve pressure from the places you know there's going to be a lot of pressure.
Would you say it's more important to relieve pressure or to like secure a lead to help it snowball?
That depends on the champion.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Like it's so variable. It's really hard for me to say
true.
like what it's going to be. Like if mid lane we're looking at like season 2 champions, we have like Orianna versus Anivia, right?
Mhm.
Like no matter how much I kill that Anivia, it's not going to matter that much, you know. But if it's super volatile and it's like Zed versus Fizz, if you get one of them ahead, then it's just over, and that guy starts 2v1 on the whole map, and it's you know it's like good luck.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great way to look at it because, you know, the reason a lot of the questions that we had are very generalized is simply because a lot of our viewing audience is, you know, the majority of League, which is, you know, bronze to gold. And a lot of what they struggle with is the, you know, including myself, is the, yeah.
No, what they
the
struggle with. I don't, I'm fucking fine.
is the decision making, knowing exactly what you're gonna do.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, even as as a farmer pro player, like even pros don't know what the right move is a lot of the time. Like in the heat of the moment, you know, it's like you just have to learn from experience and then keep that in the back of your mind when you're playing those games, and just like rely on past knowledge to get better. I know, like every time you make a mistake, the best thing you can do to get better is, if you make a mistake, try to learn 2 things from it instead of just one. Because obviously, if you're going to learn, you're going to learn from that mistake. But if you can see another mistake in that could happen, like a completely different scenario where that same mistake might occur, and you can prevent it without having to actually like have it happen, that reduces, like, instead of having to play 2,000 games to be that good, you only have to play 1,000 games to be that good. Okay. And that's what's really important to, like, if you're playing now and you just started playing and you want to be really, really good, how many mistakes you can recognize in that one mistake makes you exponentially better quicker.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we've actually talked a lot about this sort of stuff on past podcasts, like with Oni no Ken, even with GG and Pseudonaut, about just there's only so much that we can really tell you about on the podcast. A lot of it does come down to learning the game yourself and figuring out what you can do, matchups, game knowledge, all that sort of things, and how you can apply it.
Okay. Yeah, if you want something different, I mean, like, if you guys tell me the lane matchups for all the lanes, I can tell you what's probably going to happen in those lane matchups. And that might be something different rather than I can't tell you, because then I could tell you if you gave me a list of what was top, what was bot, all of that. I can tell you what's going to happen.
All right, ready, guys, for a 5-hour episode. Let's go.
There's only like 5 hours worth of combinations in League.
All right, I think there's so many different types of team combinations that I had said this on another podcast, but that the odds of you being on and against a team that you faced before are astronomically high, because that's how many combinations there are of champions on a team. So it would take a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that changes a lot. I mean, especially in higher elos, because you have the certain champs that are basically, you know, pick ban status. But let's kind of go and look at, you were talking about like mistakes and learning from mistakes. What are some of the mistakes that most junglers make over and over again, though, that it seems like they just never learn from, in your opinion?
Probably the biggest thing is they die. That's that's like number one. Like, pretty much if you learn anything in League of Legends, it's quit, don't die. That's like the biggest thing, is when you drop, like, if you drop 5+ deaths in a game, that's horrible. You should never die 5 times in a game. Like, unless you're playing for fun, or you're just trying to make plays, or you're just, you know, going to town. Like, I'm guilty of doing that, you know. Like, I'll pick Vayne and just, you know, go 10 and 10. But
yeah.
Sometimes you gotta sometimes you gotta live a little. But if you want to improve as a player, especially as a jungler, you can't die, because as soon as you die as a jungler, your XP is messed up, and the whole map just no longer has to respect you pretty much at all, because it's like 1 death, you might be able to kill a guy if you go at the perfect time. 2 deaths, it's like you're worthless and you can't do anything. You're just stuck killing minions until the game's over.
Okay. So,
I actually think this is different from the order that we ordered this question show notes list, but I think a good transition to ask about is when on the topic of dying. A lot of things that people don't know how to deal with in lower levels is what happens if they get invaded early as a jungler. What happens if they're like level 1 and then all of a sudden everyone shows up, they get killed before their buff spawns, and now they need to come up with a alternative path. Like, how do you prepare for this level 1 invade, and how in the event that it happens, what are usually your next steps to try and get back into the game?
Okay, well, for the level 1 invade, usually, since you're one man and the rest of your team's AFK in solo queue, your only option is you stand at 1 buff, and you're not AFK, and you're watching it to make sure you don't get, like, blitzcranked or Alistar'd or something, right? And then after 1 minute, what I usually do is I'll ward that spot and then go to my other buff. And then if I face tank their team there and die, I know what they're doing. And that's more important to me, to know what they're doing, than it is for me to get that buff. Because that tells me a lot of things about what they're planning to do, you know? Because it tells me, like, okay, they're trying to invade me to set me behind, so then I'll have the ability to either go to his blue or his red, depending on what he does, or I can level 2 gank somewhere, because he's going to be busy taking 3 buffs instead of, you know, actually counter ganking me with this level 2 gank, because I'm already behind. It doesn't matter if I go level 2 gank after I take the buff. So that's like my stupid solo queue strategy for trying to take advantage of them invading you, because most of the time if you get a level 2 kill, that's about the same XP as one of the buffs, and you're actually not that behind. But otherwise, try to get your teammate toward the other side so you can both ward. And then the other thing is jungle paths. Saint put out a video. I don't know if you guys watched it, but it's pretty much the perfect explanation for why you never get a leash at double golems, why you should never do double golems, why you pretty much never want a leash, is because the only way to really get cheesed in this jungle is if, like, you start if you start Krugs or Grom. That's pretty much the only way you can actually die in the jungle and get cheesed, unless they spend a ton of resources to come kill you. And most of the time you're going to be fine after that anyway, because they have to run such a long distance to kill you and then take the buff and then run back to their buff. You'll make up that XP because of how they changed the jungle mobs. So what Saint's video went over was basically, you start red buff or you start blue buff. You do not kill Krugs or you do not kill the Toad. And the reasoning for that is because if they have a Nidalee who's going to come kill you level 2, the Nidalee is going to kill blue and then come to your red, and then after you kill Krugs, you don't have smite and you're sitting there hitting red buff. The Nidalee's in the bush, and then she just kills you, and you're dead, right? If you start red buff, by the time she gets over there, you're gone. Or, in the other scenario, you're going to have smite up. If she comes to the other buff, you're going to have smite up for that buff so that you can actually contest it and potentially get it. So either way, if you look at, like, do I want a leash so I save 200 HP and risk getting cheesed by this guy? Or do I want to lose 100 to 200 HP and have smite up so that I can contest my other buff, or, like, put him at a bigger risk when he invades me?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing to go along with this is just, like, the fear of the unknown for newer junglers, where they don't know exactly where the other jungler is going to be, or they can't reasonably guess where they would be, like where they're going to start. If they just ganked a lane, where they're going to be going next, if they started which side, which lane are they most likely to start with a gank. So I think part of it is just, like, learning to sort of, like, guess at least where the enemy jungler will be, so that you're, and that's kind of, I think that's the biggest barrier to get into counter jungling as well. Because there's always just that, like, the fear of, like, oh no, it's the enemy's jungle, the jungler is going to show up. But, you know, that's only true if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and NK, I wanted to kind of build off of that. I think Haber's right that what a lot of newer junglers don't understand is that it's more than just clearing my jungle and then going to gank lanes. It's about being able to play around what the enemy jungler is doing. What are some basic things that you try and keep track of that the enemy jungler may or may not be doing, and how does that affect your own play?
Probably, like, jungling is a war of, like, very small battles, at least in this patch. In older patches, it was pretty much like if you played it correctly, you could just kill the other guy and he was done. But in this patch, you can't really do that anymore. So it's basically like a battle of small things. So generally speaking, you're looking at like if you know where wards are and you can avoid those wards, it's a lot harder for the enemy team to play around you. Pretty much like it's hard for me to talk about upper level stuff because a lot of people it doesn't even apply to them. Like mid lane, if they in a high level game, if a mid laner sees you, they just go all out aggressive and then your mid laner loses. And it's all because you got seen on a ward, it changes the entire lane matchup mid lane.
Yeah.
And that obviously doesn't apply in silver because that guy's just going hard no matter what, It
happens with bot lane. It happens with bot lane a lot.
I mean, yeah, it's it's hard to kind of talk about that stuff, but at a top tier level, if you're just trying to improve as a jungler, you have to try to make everything as efficient as possible. So to be the most threatening jungler you can possibly be, the idea is basically you have vision of their jungler, you have their jungle warded, you know where their jungler is at all times, and basically you're never seen, you're a ghost, and then when you show up, you kill someone. That's pretty much what you want to try to shoot for.
Okay.
Now, speaking of vision, one listener question that we got recently, and they talked about it on one of our other podcasts, but I really want to talk about it with you now that you bring it up. What about items like Sightstone on junglers? What do you think of that? Are there any certain junglers that you really recommend it for, or do you just not really recommend it?
I mean, honestly, if you think I haven't done the math on it because I'm not playing competitively anymore, but honestly, I'm pretty sure if you do the math on it, you buy at least 10 wards as a jungler, and if those wards are paid off, by 25 minutes, 30 minutes, game length right now is 30, 35 minutes for sure.
Yeah, roughly on average.
I mean, if it's paid off by 20, 25 minutes with all the wards you lay, why wouldn't you buy it?
Mm-hmm.
If it mathematically makes sense, that's because then it doesn't take up an inventory slot and it's giving you stats. That's golden. I know.
Yeah.
I used to get bulwark, boots, and then I'd buy 2 stacks of wards on support and jungle, and I would just ward the entire map because that was a more effective strategy than building items in solo queue. Because if you catch that guy, you win. It's
yeah,
can't do that anymore. So the next step
down,
the next step down from buying 10 wards is buy a Sightstone.
Yeah, the one thing I don't know about it is you have these hyper tanks now where it's your goal to just get as tanky as possible, and buying that Sightstone definitely puts you off that path, both in it costing that extra 800 gold and then taking up an extra item slot later in the game.
Yeah.
Whereas you could just get the upgraded trinket, and which works almost as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's definitely some more utility junglers, Lee Sin, Elise, Sejuani, Nunu, those sorts of people, where I think a Sightstone's definitely good. But people where you're just trying to be a huge presence, I would almost opt out and go for more of the trinket route.
Well, from a solo queue, in
solo queue,
in solo queue, I would definitely not recommend Sightstone. Unless you're playing obviously Nunu, unless you're playing a support champion.
Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend Sightstone. But yeah, for competitive play, having that clearing ward, the clearing trinket is
the sweeper.
Important.
Yeah, I agree. So why don't we talk a little bit about objectives here? Obviously, there's the 2 big ones being your Dragon and Baron. So let's talk a little bit first about Dragon, since that's going to comprise a lot of early and mid-game jungle presence. When exactly should you first think about Dragon?
The obvious answer is as soon as possible, because it's if you can get it for free, if there's any point where you can get it for free, you should do it. It's if you're level 4 on Nunu and they're not going to come do anything, just do it, because 90% of the time they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you should. Why not? Why wouldn't you get the free Dragon?
Yeah.
But again, it's a very situational thing.
It is
for the Dragons and the Barons.
If
you have a poke team and you have Rumble, it's you wouldn't want to go to Dragon.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about something less situational with Dragon. How do you, as a jungler, set up for it? How do you sort of work to secure it in a general sort of sense?
If you're gonna try to fight for it, probably the most important thing is you get what's the river minion called? The
Scuttle. Scuttlebutt.
Yeah, there you go.
Nachos.
You get scuttled because that speed boost. If you're gonna fight for dragon, that speed boost is really, really strong, and that can like if you have your team all group up on that and then just run at them, they can't get away really, unless they're like super mobile. But that's probably the most important thing, that you make sure you get that down. And then obviously the other thing is warding their jungle. Probably the most important thing to do is that bush that is next to dragon is really important to have warded, but there's almost never going to be a time where it's not like cleared or swept or something like that. So it's important to have wards like outside of that. So like you might not have vision in that bush, but you should be able to see all around their red area if you're going to try to force them to come to dragon, because that's what you want to see. You want to see where they're coming from when they're coming to the dragon, even if you can't keep vision of that bush.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that comes up a lot in lower elos, I don't know if it happens higher as well, but you get a successful gank off in a lane, and then you're stuck with the decision: do you get tower or do you take dragon? How do you sort of make that decision?
I guess the biggest... I don't know. Okay, so the biggest thing would be if you have like a pushing team. So like if you have a Caitlyn or you have some kind of poke champions. If you have champions that can take towers, taking that tower bottom is not a priority, because you can take towers without that need. You know, you can just show up at a turret and take it as long as you don't mess up. So there's no real reason to take that tower when you can get dragon, and your champions might be less suited for taking dragon if they're better suited for taking towers. So if you get a kill and you have a numbers advantage and then you can take dragon, that's obviously the correct call in that situation, you know. But if you have a really hard time taking towers, if you're like all melee or something, right, you're going to have a really hard time pushing them off the tower or getting the tower. But if you try to fight for a dragon with that team comp, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier. So it makes a lot more sense if you're in that situation where taking towers is very hard for you, you should take the tower. But if taking towers is easy, you should take the dragon.
Gotcha.
So speaking of which, so you get a successful gank off, especially early game on a lane, and so how do you feel about taxing the lane or shoving it up to tower, or like what do you feel is the best thing to do at that point after a successful gank in the lane?
Okay, so this depends a lot on what lane you're ganking and what summoner spells they have.
Okay.
And I was kind of thinking about this recently, and I think a lot of the issues with like this particular meta is a lot of people don't actually know how to like play around teleport, and that causes a lot of issues where they pretty much gank top, but they screw their top laner over, because TP is such a game changer as far as how the ganks work top lane. And pretty much like think about it like this: both top laners are fighting. You go gank top, you kill their top laner, you push the wave to their tower, and their top laner teleports back. Right? No matter who got the kill in that situation, that top laner isn't denied the XP that gets pushed to the tower. So they're basically even, but that guy's down 200 gold, and what does 200 gold buy you in League of Legends?
It's
a couple health pots.
It's not the whole advantage.
Usually what ends up happening is it's not a tangible enough advantage for anything to happen with it. And because of that, what the mistakes a lot of people make is like they'll gank top and they'll get the guy to blow TP, but it's pretty much real. It's almost like you didn't even gank top at all, because that guy didn't really lose anything. He died, lost like 3 minions, and then TP'd back and gall all of them. So he's down 200, 300 gold, and it's like back in the old meta where both dudes had Ignite, that guy lost 20 minions, and now he's down a level and a half, and it's like that gank actually did something. So that's one of the big things I see a lot of people have trouble with, is obviously if you kill top, you want to push it to their tower, but in some situations, if there's like a huge wave pushing to your top laner and then you kill their top laner, it's actually more effective for you to just let that big wave sit there and push in than it is to push it out.
Oh yeah.
So it's really kind of hard. You have to know how strong your laners are, pretty much, to know like if it's better for your laners to have the lane pushed out to deny a couple minions or to let them reset, or if it's better to just leave the wave where it is.
So what you're saying is never gank top.
If you don't know what you're doing, it's very difficult to gank top effectively, yeah.
I think it's easier to just focus on the bottom side of the map.
Like if you do gank top, make that guy go AFK. Basically, you either do not leave top lane.
So
you don't go there at all.
Since we're on this thread, let's talk a little bit about camping then.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about this. So I know that everyone as a laner has had that experience where they've just kind of been mercilessly camped, and then it's like a miserable experience. Like
every
5v5
community game
ever.
So as a jungler, from a jungler's perspective, how often do you consider like just hard camping a lane? Like, what are the decisions that would make you think to do that versus just trying to apply pressure in one, like across all the different points of the map versus concentrating on one?
Okay, so the primary two, I guess there's 3 reasons you'd camp somebody. The 3 reasons are: 1, you know that guy's a rager, because that's like a free win. You literally, all you do is just stand in that lane every once in a while and look at him funny, and you win the game. So it's like, why, if you're playing to win, why would you not do that? That's pretty much my question.
That's a good strategy.
That is.
I don't know why you would not do that if you're trying to win.
Check to see if they're on a losing streak, and then okay, they're 4 losses deep. Yeah. You're my bitch.
Really
the Reddit dick strategy. Go on like OPGG, see who has the lowest wins out of the past 10, and camp their ass.
Yeah. The second reason you would camp somebody is they're on a champion who's very vulnerable to ganks, but like they don't know that. So like Yasuo players is pretty much the big highlight here. Is like that guy can't get out of a gank, so pretty much you show up and he should die almost every time unless he does something crazy with a wind wall or your mid laner messes it up. But you pretty much gank him twice and he's guaranteed to die once. So it's like that's the guy you camp, because if he's behind, what is he doing? You know, like he can't CS, he has no lane presence. It's like he's got nothing going for him once he gets behind. So when you have champions like that where they're assassins that just are completely worthless once they die once or twice, those are other kind of champions you camp. So like Riven players, you know, that kind of stuff. And then the third reason you would camp a lane is because you know your team is extraordinarily worse than their team, but you believe in the other 2 lanes. So like there are situations where like in high elo you'll have a top laner playing support, and then you'll have a jungler playing AD, and then you're jungling, and it's like, well, you know they're going to get wrecked by Wild Turtle and Xpecial, so you just camp Wild Turtle and Xpecial and hope your other 2 lanes win.
Definitely. So speaking of I love it. So when it comes to ganking, when it comes to jungling, you know, everything in this patch, because this patch and this meta is a way different than it used to be in the last few seasons, obviously, especially when you started. Now you have 4 different types of smite. Which of the 4 smites do you like best? Is there any?
Final answer.
What are the criteria that make you go, okay, I'm going to take this one over this one?
Definitely poachers.
Poachers all the way.
Yeah, pretty much. Just mess with the other guy's head.
Poachers? He's got to be crazy.
How's he doing that? I didn't even know that was an item, you know? FGC mind game, that guy. But pretty much you take, I think it's not Devour, it's the purple one. You take the purple one when you need mana. That's basically the mana item.
Okay.
If you don't need mana and you're gonna be trying to think of you're gonna be punching stuff a lot and you're not very mobile.
Blitzcrank.
So you're like Udyr, you know.
Udyr.
If you're like Udyr, then obviously you take the move speed one. And then if you're scaling for late game, that's when you'd get the red one. But there's some situations where, like, if they have a Singed and you're Shyvana, you probably want to get the blue one instead of the red one, because you can just smite Singed and go really fast.
Gotta go fast.
And that's a lot better than the 200 true damage, because you might get 2 attacks off instead of 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I think like the upgrades, the enchants, anyways, are pretty much champion specific. Some are situational, like you can run Devour or Cinder Hulk on certain people. Cinder Hulk's an option for anyone, I think. Yeah. Just about anyone.
Speaking of which, I wanted to ask that. What do you think of the new Devour?
It takes too long. It's either it's too quick and it's broken, or it takes too long and it's just worthless. So like they can't balance that item. It's a stupid item, you know, because it's like if they make it viable, you ban every champion that can use it, and if it's unviable, none of those champions get played. So it's like it's like there's really nothing you can do about it. It's just a dumb item design.
Yeah, it's why when you see, you know, someone, oh, I'm gonna go Yi, you know, you see a Yi on the other time, okay, cool, go J4 and gank at level 3, you know. It just so when if a new player wants to get into the jungle, when do you think they should actually start playing jungle? Are there any certain champions that you really recommend they start with? You know, what are your best tips for like brand new? Like, I'm gonna try out jungle.
If you're brand new, I'd say don't jungle.
Jungle.
Yeah.
I would say don't jungle. I would say at least play like 10 or 15 games in every lane.
Okay.
At least, and then after you've done that, play at least 10 or 15 more, because it's like the most important thing for jungling that you need to understand as like a jungler is you. It's kind of funny because at the end of the day, you can break it down to you just got to gank stuff and kill the guy. But it's like not every.
It's a whole different ballpark from the rest of the game.
But you're so right, though.
Not everybody can do that. See, that's like the problem, because it's like some people just don't understand how to gank the lane and kill the guy. So like, I've met some people who play League of Legends who like don't think at all. Like they're not like cognitive thinkers at all, but they show up at the right place at the right time. I don't know how, you know, just they got their dowsing rod and they just, you know, they get it done.
Right? For a better game.
Yeah, and it's like, it's kind of frustrating because it's like they're so good without having to think about it. But what I think about pretty much everything, so it's like, I think that's more reliable in a sense than just, you know, dowsing rodding it, because what happens when your dowsing rod doesn't work? So pretty much.
What happens when it does work? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
I want that.
So, yeah, pretty much what I'd suggest is you need to be comfortable and familiar with every lane to a certain degree. Like you should be able to go top lane and not feed, and you should be able to go mid and not feed, and you should be able to go bot lane and not feed. Like that's the criteria I'd have, because if they're feeding and you could do it and not feed, you have, you know, like I feel like you know the lane well enough that you'd be able to, you know, judge if it was the correct decision or not for you to help that lane or not help that lane. Because that's one of the big things in low elo that happens a lot, is like somebody is in a bad matchup, like it's Vayne against Caitlyn, right? That Vayne should be getting stomped, and then Vayne just murders the Caitlyn, right? And like that's not right. Like me as a jungler, if I go, I need to go help my Caitlyn against this Vayne, like that's not what I'm thinking, you know. It's like that. I'm like,
right.
That's not correct.
And don't lose, and if you do, then fuck.
Yeah, and when that Caitlyn's telling me like you're supposed to gank bot, dude, like Vayne, we got to get her behind and stuff, you know. And it's like,
that's your job.
Yeah, like you don't need me to beat her, you know. Like you need to know that, like you need to know that matchup, and you need to know that you're right, because half the battle with leveling up as a jungler is knowing you're right, and then the other half is knowing when you're wrong. Because one thing that stops a lot of people from getting better is like, I know that Caitlyn's supposed to beat Vayne, but like when it gets into that gray area, knowing when you're right and wrong can stop you from improving, because you like have to have enough thick skin to believe in what you think, but you also have to have thin enough skin that you can accept that you're wrong. And it's kind of...
Yeah, I just thought I'd take a moment to bring that up. The jungle role is often the role that gets the most flame, just because you potentially have the impact on the entire map at even the early stages of the game. Are you a friend of the mute button, or like how do you deal with people that are calling for your lane? Calling for like a lane gank, and you just know in the back of your head like that you don't belong there.
Usually the guys who are keyboard warrioring, I usually just mute them, because you're never gonna get through to those guys. But the guys who just like ping the guy one time and type like help in chat with an exclamation point question mark, you know, like I'll tell those guys why I'm not, you know, helping them. I'll explain to them my reasoning for not going to that lane, you know. But it's very difficult to manage having thick skin and thin skin at the same time, you know.
But it's always the jungler's fault.
Yeah, it actually is though. No, really though, it really is.
It.
So, going back on that question, any certain champs though, say someone is pretty comfortable with all the lanes and they're like, all right, I am ready to dive in the jungle. Any certain champions you really think are like the most forgiving for, trying out getting in the jungle?
Yeah. Okay,
any necessities.
So the biggest one would be Nunu. That's just like, even if you feed ridiculously hard, hit Blood Boil and click your AD carry and you might win.
He's also just so much fun.
Sure, this is a tip. This is a tip. Make sure you don't click the AD carry, click the portrait, because then you can't mess it up.
Oh, okay.
Wait, you can do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
You can even
with everything.
You can also
So
quick
it's like-
cast it too.
So it's
Yeah.
like in team fights, if you're trying to Blood Boil Caitlyn and you click a minion or you miss or something like
Holy
just
crap.
hit the portrait and you're golden. Like you can't mess it up and you're guaranteed to team fight as long as Caitlyn doesn't die.
Well, today I learned.
Yeah.
TIL.
You won't be healing minions with Soraka anymore.
Yeah.
I'll still do that. That's fun.
That's just fun to do.
Well, that's fun to do to like cannon
Troll
minions.
last hits, but
Fucking favorite thing to do on Earth mode is play Karma and just keep perma shielding a minion when it was under tower. The thing would fucking never die.
All right. So, as for dealing with your laners, when's the right time to start handing off buffs? Or
Oh shit.
when do you just not do it?
Never.
We had an argument about this a few episodes ago. So
friendly
I really
arguments.
I want to see where you come from on this.
so in my opinion,
It's
it's
jungle
totally
lane.
situational. But
Of
my
course.
solo queue mentality
Uh-huh.
is basically, if they've proven they're not an idiot, I will give them blue buff.
Thank you.
That's basically it. Like most of the time, you're not going to get second blue buff if I'm playing solo queue because there hasn't been enough time for you to prove you're not an idiot. But that's the biggest thing. Like after that first dragon fight, you pretty much watch how your mid laner plays, and then if they did fine, you can give them blue buff. If not, I'd rather have it on myself or somebody else who's doing their job correctly.
What about handing off red to either your ADC or hand off red to maybe like a Tryndamere or a Jax top or something?
I'm fine with giving it to melees. I never really understood the red buff to ranged characters thing because I'm pretty sure it's still nerfed to hell. Like I know that was a patch a long time ago, but I don't know if it's still the same way.
Yeah, it
but
still has reduced for range.
so it's like melee need the slow, and it also does more true damage. It's like, why wouldn't you just give it to the melee?
Definitely.
It's
So
still
I
good
don't-
on ADCs
yeah.
though.
Yeah, I mean, if you need the slow to like kite something, I can understand that to a point, but or if they're like 6 items or something, like sure, that's fine, go ahead. But most of the time, I think if everybody's even in the game, I think it makes more sense to put it on a melee because they're going to be doing more damage, and the slow benefits them more because it'll let them do more damage just with the slow.
Mhm.
Okay. Now let's go to like neutral objectives. Like let's go to Dragon and Baron here. One, is it ever a good idea to attempt Dragon or Baron if you don't have Smite available?
In solo queue, you'd only do that if they're all dead, because pretty much you can't count on your team to like burst it or do any sort of coordinated team play to make sure you get it. So it's like it's not really worth it to kill the dragon and then lose it, even if it's like a 20% chance. Because
Or you have Callista.
yeah, I mean, if you have Callista, then you can obviously do it. But like, if you're having to like combine Gianna Tornado, Gragas Barrel, Oriana QW, like all at the same time, to
The
get it,
Janna that's not leveling
Yeah.
Tornado.
right? It's like you're having to combine all of those to make sure you get it in solo queue without voice communication. It's kind of it's kind of sketchy. So I'd only do it if it's like totally free. Like if their whole team's top, obviously, like go ahead, but. If it's like a 50-50, I would not bother doing it without smite up.
So basically, only if you have Bard with his ult up. Got it.
Right. Yeah, if you can stop them from getting in and you trust your teammates to do that, then yeah, go for it.
Okay, and then when should you contest Dragon and Baron versus just saying, fuck it, let them have it and go for a lane.
Yeah, if it's a close game, usually you just say screw it, they can have it. But if you're like just getting hopelessly murdered, it's like 34-3, and all 3 of your kills were them diving your Nexus. Like, you probably just want to go for it at that point because you're gonna need a lot of help to get back into that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, what about like different? I don't know. I guess we talk about in this show a lot of archetypes, like trying to find ways to categorize things for people to make it kind of simple to think of and remember. What do you feel like the different archetypes of junglers, like what are they? Who would be included in those archetypes?
Okay, so I wrote out like a quick list of stuff. I wrote there's fast clears, there's brawl gankers, there's tank gankers, and then there's God, and that's Rek'Sai.
I knew you were gonna say that. I fucking knew it. I knew there was gonna be a special category for either Rek'Sai or Gragas. I was like, there has to be.
You have to be good at Gragas, so it's like that kind of negates.
I heard Vi with a new Devourer is pretty crazy, but
yeah. But you have to get it. Yeah. That doesn't happen.
That's true.
It's like
when in doubt, pick Rek'Sai,
right?
Or ban.
Pretty much. So pretty much fast clears would be like Shyvana, Diana, Master Yi. Pretty much those champions would just stay in their own jungle or try to like counter jungle when the enemy jungler ganks. And the whole idea is you hit 6, and then since you're so strong at 6, you can just murder whatever lane you want. And try to take the game from there. The brawl gankers like Vi, Xin, Lee, and Jarvan, they're all really strong, like 1v1 fighters. They're good gankers, and they have okay clears. Then the tank gankers are obviously like team fight champions, so that's like Gragas, Sejuani, and Nautilus. And that's usually what you see in competitive play, because you hit one of those ults. Yeah, you hit one of those ults, and it's a big, it's a big game changer. So those are the tiers.
I love it. I love the breakdown because
God tier.
Yeah, and Rek'Sai.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people really have trouble figuring out, including myself. Like, what am I going to pick this game? Who should I pick? Why? And I guess that's another question too. So, say someone's climbing. You're climbing ranked. Do you think it's best to be a one-trick pony, or do you think it's best to have a pretty diverse champ pool when it comes to jungle, at least?
Well, like logically speaking, if you were good at one champion in every lane, you should win like 90% of your games, or like 65%. Well, if you want to throw out 90, but 65% of your games, right? But pretty much the issue you run into is it's like, a lot of games aren't like even at all. So the better you know a champion and how they can function in that game, the better you're able to take control over it. So like, if your bot lane's feeding, your top lane's feeding, your mid lane's doing okay, and you like main Nidalee and you've got 1,000 Nidalee games, and this has happened 250 times before, you know exactly what to do on Nidalee to turn this around, right? But like one of your other champions, like, it might have been smarter to play Lee Sin because they had all these aggressive lanes or something, but instead of picking Lee Sin, you pick Nidalee. But it's like you don't know what to do with Lee Sin in that situation, so you end up losing that game. Whereas with Nidalee, you've seen this happen a whole bunch of times before, and you know what to do. So honestly, being a one-trick pony is not advisable because eventually you will get banned out, and eventually you're going to have to dodge more games than you play. But for climbing, I honestly think it's probably one of the better things to do because it allows you to know what to do in specific situations better and more strongly than what most people would know with their champion.
Definitely. Excellent. Now, skipping around here, sorry for the questions. So, in what ways do you think that a jungler can leverage, I guess it kind of ties in, but in what ways do you think a jungler can leverage their strengths best in any given game?
That pretty much depends on the champion. Like, it's all variable with that question. It's very hard to, go into that. Like Nidalee's level 2 and level 3 is super strong, so you're gonna want to go invade their jungle and kill that guy. You know, like if you have the ability to kill the dude, you might as well go try to kill the dude. You know, it's like it's not like you can clear the jungle that fast either. So it's like taking that risk to try to kill that guy is probably smarter than, you know, almost dying to wraiths. So it's like you just have to know what your jungler's capable of doing, and then know what their jungler's capable of doing, and then try to exploit yours to the advantage you have. You know, like that jungle Ezreal game in the LCS, for example, right? What is their jungler going to do if a double buff Ezreal goes mid and pushes the tower? You know, like nothing. You just got to think
nothing
about
you can never do.
Right. You just think about what your jungler can do, and then you just, you know, do that thing that's going to help you win the game. That's pretty much, you got to just be thinking all the time, like, my jungler can do all of these things. How do I use them to win the game?
I mean, if there's anything I just got out of that, it's play Ezreal jungle every game. But
yeah. Well, they changed hours, so good luck. best wishes.
Damn it. Okay. So,
I have a question to ask, because we have a lot of listeners that get tripped up on this in the jungle. There's a lot of times where I see junglers complaining, like, I felt like I couldn't do anything this game because all my lanes were pushed. And then they feel like there's just like this gap where it's like, I can't do anything. So if you find yourself in this situation where most of your lanes are pushed and they're not easily gankable, what are some other things you have in the back of your mind as ways to, like, still apply pressure on the map, or essentially try and win the game?
Okay, well, when your lanes are pushed, that's actually what you want. Like, that's like the dream, basically. And a lot of people don't understand why that's the dream, so I'll explain to you why it's the dream. So when all 3 lanes are pushed, your job, instead of being salvaging people feeding, is stopping people from feeding. And there's a big difference between those two things, because in one thing, where you have to stop people from feeding, you might have to stop top from feeding, and you might have to stop bot from feeding. And that's very difficult to do because they're on other sides of the map, and generally as a jungler you don't take teleport. So the beauty of everybody being pushed in is that you can all you have to do is if you go in and keep track of where their jungler is, instead of it being you against their top, their mid, their bot, and their jungler, it's literally just you against their jungler. So as long as you keep track of where their jungler is, and that guy doesn't kill anybody because you ping the hell out of him as soon as he walks over your wards, they can't kill your guys pushing. The guys pushing are obviously going to be winning lane, and then you just cherry pick which guys to dive. And then as soon as you dive that guy, he gets so behind he can't do anything, and then it's just like you literally get to pick which lane you want to snowball and when, as long as you just ward their jungle and keep track of their jungler. And the beauty of it too is if you end up having to fight that other jungler in their jungle, all you have to do is ping the guy a lot, and your mid laner comes first or your top laner comes first, because the other dude's stuck under tower CSing. It's like, what's that other jungler supposed to do if you stop him from killing people?
Right.
And that's pretty much, you have to change your mentality from, I'm supposed to gank these guys and kill them, to, I'm supposed to stop these guys from dying to this dude. Because if you do that, the other team is completely screwed.
Yeah, wow.
That's good.
Yeah.
So,
I do want to, I know I'm chiming in again, but you brought up a point that we didn't talk about yet that I also think is really important for jungle. Tower diving. It's something that is always, you know, it's a bit of a risk play, and it's something that can pay off really well. What are the things you are looking for in terms of deciding when to tower dive? And if you do decide to go in for a tower dive, how do you sort of set up for it?
Well, kind of like I was talking about a little bit ago, you keep track of their jungler. Like, obviously, if their jungler's there, you don't want to dive the guy, because then that spins the whole game around. If you both end up dying, their mid laner pushes out the wave, it's just like, it's a complete mess. So obviously, when you tower dive, you'd ideally have vision of their jungler, but that's not going to happen every game. So pretty much what you want to make sure is that guy is going to die. Because usually what I notice is a lot of laners, when they're against, when they're just laning, they're focused solely on how much damage the other laner can do. And they're basically looking at like, all right, if this guy blows everything to try to kill me right now, I'll live. Right? And that's what he's thinking. That's what he's playing around. And as soon as you throw in that the jungler's damage, he's dead, right? And that's what their mindset is. They're sitting under tower low health, like they're not calculating for the jungler. But some players who are extraordinarily good can calculate for that, and they're always thinking about how to get out of that dive and that kind of stuff. So pretty much when you're looking for a dive, make sure you know where their jungler is and make sure you can kill the guy, because if you don't kill the guy and you just like botch the whole thing, that can like turn the whole game around.
And this is also assuming that you got to that lane undetected, like diving somebody that they know that you're there after you just killed a ward. Like that's
well, if they can't do anything about it, it's like
true.
Yeah,
kill 'em.
well, yeah, but they can't do anything about it. Like if you know that they can't do anything about it, you're not really thinking about how best to go about this dive. You're thinking this guy's screwed anyway. So
right.
I also wanted to ask about this, and this plays into diving somewhat, but really it's just a general thing for jungling. What type of timers do you keep track of besides the general timers like Dragon and Baron? And also, in terms of like flashes, a lot of times people will say things like, "Okay, we got his flash." Like, do you consider it a successful gank if you get your laner's flash, and how do you play around that?
If you blow their flash and they don't lose HP, pretty much didn't do anything. I mean, to some extent, depending on the lane matchup, you did do something because that might allow your laner to make a play and get a kill, but that's very volatile. Like, it depends on the lane matchup. If it's a super passive lane, sometimes it doesn't even matter. Unless they lose a lot of HP. Like, that's pretty much the biggest factor in a gank, is you can gank somebody and effectively, like, even if you don't blow their flash, if they lose a bunch of HP trying not to blow their flash, that's almost better than them blowing their flash and not losing HP. Because if they flash without losing HP, you have to come back because your gank pretty much didn't do anything. But then again, it's like you have a better chance at a kill as well. So it's one of those things where it's really hard to kind of say, but that's like the biggest factor, honestly, in my mind. Like, that's the simplest way to explain it, is sometimes a gank actually doesn't do anything. It's like that top lane thing I talked about with teleport. It's like it can apply to flashes too, where if they flash and nothing really happens, it's the same scenario where even though they're down flash, they're not actually like behind.
Yeah, that's why if I get ganked in the mid lane, because junglers have that mentality often. It's like, oh, he flashed, I'm out because that was worth, because it was a flash. But like, I'll be on someone that doesn't have a whole lot of escape, and me flashing is meaning I get to stay a little bit longer and farm rather than me taking a bunch of damage and risking getting ganked again. So I'll flash early, and junglers will be like, oh, he flashed, worth, and then they leave after doing no damage to me. But that was the right play because now they're gone and I get to farm for free. Sweet.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like a bigger burden because then the jungler has to come back mid.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
and I know that. I know that.
Yeah.
Oh, he went that way. I'll just toss a word in that bush, play safe for the next minute. Whoop. I'm good.
Right. Yeah.
So, now, kind of circling back through stuff. So, sorry. Jungler's vision priorities, in your opinion. I mean, obviously it can change depending on the matchups, the lane, stuff like that. But overall, what do you think a jungler's vision priorities are? So you got your first few, wards, or you have a couple green wards on you. What are your main objectives of making sure that you have vision on it?
Okay, so the big thing is pretty much if my mid laner doesn't buy 2 wards, I hate that guy because it's his job. It's his job to ward mid. Right, it's his job to ward mid, and it's my job to fill in for where wards need to go. If I can ward their jungle instead of warding mid, that's a lot more useful as far as information is concerned, because that ward at their Razor Beaks or their Wraiths or whatever in that little bush, that'll tell me oh, their jungler's topside. It literally it helps the whole map, right? And it helps the whole map a lot as far as knowing what can happen at what time. Bot lane knows they have 30 or 45 seconds of just free reign on their lane, and it's top lane knows they have 10 or 15 before that guy could show up there. And when mid doesn't ward like that, it's very hard for me to go out and get those wards because I don't have vision. I can't, like even if it's just the side pushes mid, that gives me a lot of room to kind of move out and get deeper into their jungle safely. Because then I know, like, yeah, Jarvan's not in that bush, and he's not going to, go on me and have his mid laner come over and go on me, and then my mid laner's not going to know what's happening because he didn't expect Jarvan to be in that bush. But pretty much, if your mid's not warding, you have to ward mid, and then if your mid is warding, you want to try to get deeper wards because that helps every lane a lot. And pretty much the whole reason you ward mid if your mid isn't warding is because that still helps every lane. It's just not as much.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But as the mid main or a mid main, I'm gonna say for all the mids, please ward to help because that's messed up. You should ward.
Well, it helps the whole team. Like that's the way it's like if you're gonna be greedy and buy an extra Dorans or something, it's like that's not worth having.
No.
Their whole river warded for the whole team for the length of a ward.
Or a pink. Okay. God, a pink. It's 100 gold. Yeah. Holy cow.
Now, how do you...
People don't buy enough pinks ever.
It's ever. Ever. I don't understand.
How do you feel about Scuttle Crab control as it relates to the vision game and stuff? Or do you really not rely on that as vision, but more so for the speed boost?
If your team's behind, if your team's behind, obviously it's helpful because if your team's behind, it's very difficult to get vision over an objective, and that little bit of vision can help out a lot as far as like controlling that objective is concerned, because sometimes it might be too risky to walk that deep to ward dragon where you'd want to ward it, and getting the vision on that Scuttle Crab helps a lot. But otherwise, like, it's more important to have like real wards, around the dragon than it is to have the Scuttle Crab most of the time.
Yeah. Scuttle's nice though because it can't be killed, so once it's down,
and that's the reason it's good if you're losing.
Yeah, that is permanent vision.
Yeah. On the flip side, I wanted to ask a bit about vision denial and balancing the Raptor buff that allows you to clear wards and the sweeping lens. Do you typically upgrade your sweeper at level 9, and how do you try and play around the Raptor buff in terms of like using it to its fullest potential?
Pretty much what you want to do is you'd want to upgrade your trinket ASAP, and you want to use the Raptor buff when you're roaming around in like kind of weird spots because you'll never notice that there's wards there otherwise. And that's pretty much the biggest thing you want to use with Raptor. Like if somebody wards over mid wall to see like your Wraith area and that area, you never really like scan that area that often. Like if you think about it, how often do you really scan that unless you see them ward it? Pretty much never, right? So a lot of the time what ends up happening is you want to scan the common areas and then have Raptor buff up for when you're exploring those areas where people are likely to ward, but you would normally not scan otherwise. So like in the middle of mid lane, those kind of spots is where you'd want to bring the Raptor buff to.
Now, how often would you recommend going with maybe the yellow trinket rather than instead of doing the upgrade sweeper?
Pretty much if I'm playing like a scale till like a fast clear jungler like we talked about, I'd go with the yellow trinket because I'm just going to be running all over the place and I'm going to be stronger than their jungler 99% of the time. So just being able to run around and ward wherever I want is pretty important. And then I'm obviously not going to build Sightstone on those champions in solo queue because I'm building up to, just kill stuff. But on more like team fight oriented stuff where you're just jockeying for a good catch or something, obviously you want to get the vision clearing trinket because if they don't know you're there and you can just get a free like VIQ on a guy and just insta kill him, that's obviously more important than seeing that guy's running down to bot lane or something, and then you have to run all the way down there and try to kill him or something like that. Usually you're not even going to get anything if you catch one guy. So if you're on a team fight champion, you want the sweeper, and if you're on like a split pusher super scaler, then you'd want the split push ward trinket. Is the name I'd call it, the yellow one, the split push ward trinket.
I have a question. Are there any alternative summoners you take aside from Flash?
On specific champions, you can take Ignite, Exhaust, and Teleport.
Ignite obviously on like a Shaco or something like that. What about Exhaust though?
Exhaust you can take on Shaco as well. Exhaust is good on Shyvana, and then Honestly, you can take it on any champion with a gap closer. So if you really want to, you can take it on like a Xin Zhao or Jarvan, any champion like that. You just have to play a little differently. Because a lot of the time what happens is Jarvan will like EQ in and then be like, oh crap, and then flash out. And it's like, if you can stop yourself from making bad decisions, you won't have to do that in the first place. So
Yeah.
you can get away with it on champions like that too. And then like teleport, you can take on the fast clear junglers. So like Shyvana, Diana, Master Yi, you can take it on all of them. And it's actually better than Flash, in my opinion. Because what does Flash do on, you know, Shyvana, Diana, or Master Yi? Like Diana, sometimes Flash is better if they have a mobile team. But a lot of the time it's like you just, oh, their jungler's ganking bot, you just TP in. And then that guy will be like, oh crap, and they'll call it off. You just cancel your TP, and it's like, nice, I get to farm more.
Then what about like the items? Because this is a big question I personally have, which is, so you have a champ that works well with Warrior and Cinderhulk. When do you get Warrior? When do you get Cinderhulk?
Pretty much, I played a little Vi this season, and that's a big champion for when you get Warrior, when you get Cinderhulk. And pretty much the biggest thing is like, if I know I'm gonna kill a whole bunch of dudes, I'm gonna get Warrior. And that's pretty much like, you just have to know if you're gonna, if in this particular game you're gonna be able to kill a lot of dudes. Like if you drop 2+ kills before you back, you can grab a Warrior.
I was gonna say, like, what makes you think like, oh man, I'm about to kill these dudes? And
yeah, like sometimes it's just a feeling. Like you might be 0-0-0 and not have killed anybody, but like you can just tell by how the other guys are playing that I can get a Warrior and just, you know, screw these guys. But generally speaking, if you don't know what that feeling's like, then I'd only do it if you have 2 or more kills, and even then, it's safer to probably go Cinderhulk. But if you want to try to carry the game and live the life, you know, then
YOLO.
get the Warrior, get the Trinity Force, live the dream.
We're here to teach people how to be able to do that, though. So one day, if you haven't been able to experience that, it is a great feeling, though. Just being like, oh, I'm about to kill some fools.
I mean, really, overall, the main thing I'm getting from this episode is
play more
Warrior Ezreal with Trinity Force every game.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. We can't take Runeglaive. We'll just go Trinity Force again. Fine.
I have a question for my fellow casters. Did Lux get mentioned at all over the last 2 weeks?
No, we brought that up like after the podcast. Like, holy shit. We didn't talk about Lux once.
Wow, I'm impressed.
And as soon as you're back, you son of a bitch, we bring it back.
Well, of course.
And just to wrap it up, the most important question, Trundle Jungle, what do you think?
And I don't think it's that bad in this meta. Like, to be honest with you, like, it makes complete, like, perfect sense. Like, unless you're playing against Dyrus, because that one game he built horrible, so...
that was so funny, though!
Your ult would not really do anything against him that game, but... Like, if you're playing... If you're... Like, honestly, he's not bad in the current meta, because it's like... Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw TSM play him, because they could burn tanks, he wouldn't have to gank, it'd be perfect.
That's true. All right, so was there... I think that about wraps this up. Was there anything that else you want to mention? NK, any plugs you want to do, anything like that?
No, thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, we really appreciate
coming on. It was a lot of fun.
Everyone, thanks for joining us, and appreciate you coming on. If you want show notes for the show, you can always shoot us a email at forwards@trinityforcepodcast.com. And thank you so much for joining us, NK Inc. Thank you, Pseudonaut, for helping us get in touch. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good week. Take care, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
See ya.
Okay, recording's cut, but we're still up. Oh my goodness.